Hi, good morning all. Thanks for Dassault for the invitation to be here because I'm very passionate about this subject. And I'm talking about this subject as an entrepreneur, as an employee of an international company, but as also, and perhaps more than anything else, as a citizen of the world. You know, we heard in the beginning Martin Luther King saying, I have a dream, and I think we all have a dream. And you know, when we ask all people in all countries, what is a good life? If I ask you, what is a good life? There is always a common answer, whatever is the country. Is a life, when I have a children, I can give to my children a better life than mine. And we all have this aspiration in all types of countries. But we are facing challenges. In Western countries, we have no more jobs. We send them here. In some countries, 1/3 of our youth people, less than 25 years old, are having diplomas but don't have jobs. And you have challenges here and also in many other countries. You want a better life. You want the best of the best. You don't want the low cost. You want the high end. You don't want to be the factory only of the world. You want to be the factory of your own consumption. We have these challenges. But more than that, we have a complexity altogether as citizens of the world. The population is growing. We are 7 billion. In some years, in some decades, studies are saying we will be between 9 and 11. So how to answer to the first question? We want to live better and to give to our children better lives. And the complexity is also coming because we have less and less growth. In all the countries, if you look to the last 15 years, the growth in all the countries is going down and down. We have growth, but it's down and down. Why? Because when you see in the last 15 years, productivity is going down. Because how to make growth, you can make investments, but it's limited. And then the history shows that the first engine of growth is productivity, and we need productivity. So today, I want to share with you a hope as a citizen of the world. And this is the hope of these new technologies that will bring a step change in this productivity and in the way we manufacture today. So, I am Moundir Rachidi. I'm from the Boston Consulting Group. I am leading the operations activities in France. When we mean operations, is manufacturing, supply chain, procurement and engineering for industrial companies, international companies, and I'm leading what we call the ICO, Innovation Center for Operations for BCG worldwide. So I'm a new type of consultant. I'm a new generation of consultant. I'm a kind of doer consultant, and I will explain this later. But before that, let me share with you today this hope. Let me guide you, but also share with you as a consultant some secrets. Because we are working with the best companies or the leading companies, biggest companies, and I would like to share with you what works well, what doesn't work well, also when implementing these technologies. What I suggest you today to organize this session is 3 parts. So the first one, let's align all together on what is Operations 4.0, or you can call it Industry 4.0. I will explain you later why I call it Operations 4.0, and I prefer that. The second thing, I would like to share with you a study we have done in BCG, asking some companies in 4 countries about these new technologies and the maturity of the implementation of these technologies. And finally, I would like to share with you this new way also of supporting industrials, but also for industrials to embark in this very important journey. Let's start. Why we call it 4.0? We call it 4.0 because we consider it's the 4th industrial revolution. So you all know the first one. The first one was the steam. In the 18th century, the steam power. And it allowed the first kind of plants. The second one was the division of labor, the specialization of tasks, and the electrical power, which allowed bigger plants, more industrial quantities. Then in the 70s, we had the computers, the IT systems, the automation. which allowed also more complex things, bigger quantities, but also more complex things. And finally today, where this is a new revolution, and it's revolution not because it's of the technology itself, it's because of the impact of the technology. A revolution is a revolution because it allows a step change on the productivity and on the performance of the companies. This is why it's a revolution. But let me share with you one first thing. The first thing is that it's operations, it's not only industry, or it's not only the shop floor. You have seen it yesterday, different companies sharing with you different approaches, Honda, Doosan, Airbus helicopters, but all not talking only about the shop floor, but talking about what is surrounding the shop floor, because this revolution will also create a new way to manage the operations and not only manufacturing. So manufacturing will be helped by the design, by the supply chain, by new types of ways to interact with the suppliers. First element. The second element, you see an axis, a vertical axis. Each one of these revolutions is becoming more and more complex. Because, and especially this one, will be much more complex than the other one. Meaning complex, meaning that the importance of people also will be key. I think it was Mr. Charles yesterday who was mentioning all this starts with people and ends with people. So the technology, I warn you, is not replacing people. The technology and this industrial revolution is helping people to increase the cake and to work differently as all the other industrial revolutions. But what is inside this Operations 4.0? There are many ways to see it. But at the end, it's 8 types of technologies that are working together. Let me go through them very quickly. The first one is what we call smart machines and robots, or new types of robots. You all know the classical robot with the fans, needing specialized engineers, programming it, doing big quantities. Of course, we will have these kinds of robots also in the future. But now there are new types of robots. There are collaborative robots. Collaborative in the sense, one operator, not skilled, can show to the robot what to do, and the robot is just repeating by clicking a button. You don't need a fence, because this robot can detect any touch points, so he can block, so there is no safety issue. And these robots are opening new ways of doing the operations and activities, because it's improving ergonomy, it's improving cycle times, it's improving quality. But you don't have only robots or cobots, you have the drones that are helping in big plants, that are helping in large fields, in mines, in oil and gas platforms for inspection, for example. And you have also, for example, guided robots that are transporting things in warehouses or in plants. And in itself, just this type of technology can give you a step change in some productivity and quality. But it's not the only one. You have additive manufacturing, the famous 3D printing. And you know now, in some airplanes, for example, you have 30 parts of the airplanes that are replaced. When they are replaced as spare parts, they're replaced by 3D printing. And the studies show that the 3D printers, some 3D printers are more robust than the production of a classical supplier with the mold. At the same time, it's additive. That means we don't take out material, we don't lose material, we add material. That means we use mostly the material we need. And we gain a lot in terms of loss of material. But also it's helping not only spare parts, it's helping now for prototypes, fast prototyping. And in the future, it will help for production, at least for small and medium series. Then the augmented reality. Now you can put a glass and it shows you all the steps that you have to do. So imagine, not skilled workforce, in different countries or different languages. You can have the right information with the right language, written or by voice, given to the operator so he can apply the operations. What does it mean? Very reduced training time. No time for the management to be involved. It's done easily. What does it mean again? It means also that you are guided. You avoid the defects. What else? You can produce much more things. Because today, if I want to produce, and I want to assemble, for example, a scooter, I need to remember as an operator or even as a manager what is the operations. When I have my glasses or my iPad, they have augmented reality. I don't necessarily need to remember. I need to follow the task. And I'm becoming an operator that can manage more complexity, and instead of just remembering and repeating, I'm more focusing on problem solving and detection of issues. This was the third. The fourth one, industrial internet. You all have heard, or Internet of Things. So in all our plans, you probably know it, we have millions, if not billions already of data that are not used. And often, in the past, we could not link them. Today, we can link all this data. We can link the SCADA, the PLCs from different brands that are not designed to be linked together. We can link all these things together. And we can also add new types of sensors to measure almost everything with very little cost. And all these four technologies, by the way, we can link them all together, because you can link, this is the interest of this revolution, is not each technology itself, is the link of all these technologies that makes the step change. Don't be mistaken. This is not one by one, and this is why it's complex. When we link those four ones, the first ones, we have a lot of big data. And we have a big data. What is interesting is not the big data. What's interesting is the small data inside the big data that helps me to take the right decision. For energy, for example, what is the right mix that I need to follow to optimize my energy when I have a processing factory, for example? Or what is the parameters, the correlation, the right correlation of parameters that help me do the best quality, for example, for my production? And here also, it's a huge field that is open and also has a lot of implications in terms of competencies, for example. Then, we have, this was, with big data is that we use the past and we try to have better decisions for the future. But now we have also, on top of that, the simulations. Simulations helps to predict the future, to see what is the product, but not only to see what is the product. You have seen some examples yesterday to see what is the process, but it's not only that, is to see the implication between the product and the process, but also is to simulate the performance instead of launching your plant or changing your lines and then discovering that you have a lot of issues. And then you all know you have a lot of ramp-up time and you use a lot of money and you lose a lot of energy. All this, a lot of these steps and waste can be eliminated through these simulation tools. And all these things, all these 6 elements generate also a lot of information, how to use them. Now we have what we call horizontal and vertical integration. So vertical is giving the right information to the operator till the boss, but giving the right information, not like today when we give standard information, we give boards to fill, and sometimes it's not needed. The morning shift has quality issues and it's priority. In the afternoon, we have energy issues and it's the priority, but we just ask them, please follow all the same things. So this will be finished. And we will give things real time. We will give things on phones. We will give things on watches. We will give things, all this information at the right time to take the right decisions. And finally, last but not least, all these connections is linked to cloud, for example, and also the cybersecurity element is very important because you create a lot of entry points. But you don't need, of course, to be completely cyber secure to start doing this. What we mean is just you need to start thinking about cybersecurity from the beginning and not just discover it at the end. So again, this is all operations 4.0 is the sum of these things. So many companies ask me, hey, Moundir, sorry, but this is for very mature companies. We are not yet there. We are at 2, or if not 1.50 in terms of maturity. This is wrong. This is wrong. You cannot follow all the ladder steps. You can use the operations 4.0 to improve your current performances. For example, companies that are doing lean or doing operational excellence. they can use technologies to have better execution. Because as you know, this lean and operational excellence is based on people and on the level of people, on the discipline, on the level of your managers. And we complain, oh, I don't have the right managers, we need to change managers, we need to train managers. All these tools, and you have seen some yesterday examples in the meetings, for example, how to manage them. You give a lot of elements of decision to the people to take the right decisions. This was the first thing. The second thing, I don't know if you noticed, in the 4 revolutions that I mentioned, this one has a characteristic. In the first 3, the companies were more advanced than their employees. I remember when I started working 22 or 23 years ago, my first computer was given to me by the company. Now, all our employees know better simulations, know better digital than most of the companies. So it's the first revolution, industrial revolution, where our employees are more advanced than the companies. So also this is false to think that this Operation 4.0 is working only for high-skilled people. No, as I explained to you, like augmented reality, autonomous robot, all these things, even the simulations, are working for all type of people in their own language and in a very easy manner, because these people have a lot of abilities in using more their brain and not only their hands. But why we are talking, you can ask me, why we are talking about these operations 4.0 now, this revolution, and not some years ago? Because there are different elements. The first one, the prices are going down very fast. And it's continuing to go down because there is huge competition worldwide. The second thing, all these technologies have an increase in their own performance. When you take the robots, for example, the collaborative robots, the performance of the collaborative robots is estimated to improve 5% each year in the next 10 years. 5% each year in the next 10 years, which is huge. Just the robots. The third element, it's easy to use. It's not complex technologies where you need very skilled people. Of course, you need some. We'll see it later. But for the majority of the workforce, they can use it, either administrative or blue collars. And finally, this is new, and it's a big part of the revolution. We can link these technologies, which can help to create new types of operations. And all what I'm talking about is not tomorrow, it's today. And this is why the title of this session is The Race, because the race is starting. And the target is to know where you are. But why we're talking about all these operations? At the end, let me be a bit provocative. We don't care about technologies. We are here about performance of companies. This is, I'm sharing with you, is one of my secrets, I told you. I'm sharing with you the synthesis. This is not a survey. It's synthesis of more than 50 worldwide companies. Some of them are leading companies in their markets. The synthesis of their strategies, what they include in their strategic in terms of result by introducing Operations 4.0. So you have different elements. The first one, you see big numbers. Those are big numbers. When you see manufacturing costs reducing by 10 to 20%, and mainly here is some in emerging, in Western countries, you can extend them when you deploy. It's huge numbers. You can have these numbers in terms of cost. The second element is not only cost, it's also about flexibility. In one plant, in the same plant today, by introducing these technologies, linking them, you can produce more high-end. You can produce better quality. You can produce more complexity. Why? Because you are reducing your ramp-up time. You're reducing your changeovers. You're reducing the way to manage this complexity with your people, with less defects. And you can see here some big numbers in terms of time reduction. Again, those are real numbers. Third element, it's not touching, again, only the shop floor or the manufacturing. It's touching, as you can see, the warehouses, the transport cost, or the inventories. And this is why we call it the revolution. is not because it's fancy technologies. It's because when we link these technologies, we have these results. This is the key part of this thing, what we are talking about, and it's why it's so strategic for any company in the world to consider this. Besides to these elements, this Operations 4.0 is also a transformation accelerator. As I told you before, it can help for the execution. When you are having a lean program, Six Sigma program, operational excellence program, production system program, whatever is the name, what is most important is performance. And we all know it's difficult to execute in a sustainable way. And this can help your workforce, even low-skilled workforce. You can improve your ergonomy. You can improve, again, your quality. You can better follow your performance and manage more complex portfolios of products. The second thing is also allowing new type of communication in the companies. And probably we will see big changes in organizations of operations in the future in companies between supply chain, production, engineering, procurement, even the link between sales. All this is making the information available for everyone. It's becoming transparent. We can decide with an end-to-end vision and not just the silos. If I'm the transport guy, I want to load my trucks. If I am the warehouse guy, I want to empty my warehouse. If I am the plant manager, I just want to load the plant. And we know all that with this thinking, there is a big loss. But sharing this information and bringing these company silos, it's another way of working. And finally, all this will have implications in company strategies, industrial strategies, either in footprints, in the allocation of products. For example, many Western companies now are imagining to relocate some plants near to the customer, to produce for the customer, and to produce not having big plants, producing on stock and producing on big quantities, but having smaller plants with fast ramp-ups, managing on order, and managing with a more complex portfolio adapted to the demand. This is valid for the Western countries, but it will be also for markets like here, where you are increasing the internal consumption, and you will need to answer to the internal consumption. And of course, you will also be able to develop with these technologies new business models, new ways to offer to your clients, like utilization of equipments based on hours or performance, and not just selling, for example, equipment. So as you can see, we have quantitative performance, and we have also other impacts that will have impact in the future on the quantities, but so far are transformation accelerators. So this is valid not only for plants. Again, it's valid for all types of industries. It's valid for mines, it's valid for assembly, it's valid for processing companies, it's valid for oil and gas platforms, etc. And it's valid, as you understood, for all types of functions, R&D, production, administrative functions, etc., etc. But now, let me share with you some other secrets based on the experience with leading companies that engaged in this journey some years ago. Because, of course, when you engage in a revolution like this and you are in the race, you do mistakes. The most important is to learn. The first mistake is just to start to launch technology for technology and invest to have just technology and say, I have this technology. This is a mistake. Of course, it's good to test, but you need to test for performance. This is the most important thing, is not for the technology. The second thing is to define an operation strategy only with one way. And we see different things. We see some companies doing bottom-up, asking their different plants, different people to introduce different types of technologies and test them in different plants. But when you test them in different plants, it's nice, but you're not able to link these technologies and you're not able to make the step change. But it's good to test because this is the way to learn. But you need a vision. You need to know how you will integrate all these technologies, where you will integrate them, with which teams you will integrate them, with which types of organization, with which budget, because of course you need a small budget. And let me tell you, all the numbers I showed you before, the return on investment, when you launch it in one plant, is between 12 to 18 months. And most of the companies, these international companies, have as a target for deployment 4 to 5 years, not more. So we are not talking about a vision for 20 years. We are talking about 4 to 5 years for big companies with big deployment. And you have seen yesterday examples of companies who already started and now starting to deploy. The third pitfall, operations, again, 4.0 is not against lean. When you start this, you should not stop lean. On the contrary, you should use all your strengths and integrate them. So it's not the technology that should determine how your company should run. No, you need to define what you want. This is why you need the strategy in the top-down, so you can define how the operations 4.0 and technologies need to follow you. So you need to understand what you want to keep from your lean, what you want to boost, what is not working when you ask your people to implement, to help them and to reach your results. But you cannot oppose them. They are all going in the same direction. The fourth point is you need to take into account enablers, what I call enablers. Basically, human resources in competencies. What are the competencies you need? Data scientist, what is the project team, how you work, and the IT systems. Also, I can mention other enablers. To make all these technologies, you need another way to work also with new companies doing technologies, how you manage them, how you follow them, how you define the criteria to select them. And often we see companies forgetting, and after they have to adjust. And finally, last but not least, the Operations 4.0 is not a technical journey, it's a strategic journey that needs to be followed by CEOs. Of course, technical people are very important, but they are not the only ones. They need help, and they need this journey integrated in the company strategy. So these are my secrets to share with you after some years of experience already on this topic. And you might have to face in the future. Now, this is I share it with you. We aligned on Operations 4.0 and some pitfalls to avoid. Now, let me share with you the survey I mentioned on the maturity for some countries, and of course, meaning is the sum of companies. And it's the result of a survey we did. And this is just the answer of the companies on those 4 countries. There are different steps. Of course, the first step is people saying, I'm not really aware, I don't have any experimentation. The second step, I'm aware, and perhaps I'm having some experimentation. Then the second phase is I am having a vision, a business vision, not just a vision to say I'm introducing augmented reality, for example, but a real vision, what do I want to achieve as a step change in terms of cost and in terms of flexibility. The third step is once you have this vision very clear with your roadmap and you know what you will get at the end as a target, then you need to prepare your IT systems already existing, what do you do with them, how you train your people, how you implement that, with the ecosystem you work, etc. And the final thing, of course, this is the target of every company to get the result, is to deploy. So some remarks, as you can see. The first one, the countries, there are some differences, but in general, you see there is an awareness that is starting. And compared to the other revolutions, there is no one that is really ahead. The race started, and we are almost all at the same line. Perhaps the speed is not the same, but we are still at the beginning. You can see also very few people have integrated, very few companies have integrated already vision, very clear where you want to go. The leading companies have, believe me, and they already finished their pilots, plants, where they integrated all technologies, and now they are starting to prepare for scale. And the last point, as you can see, there is honestly no company so far in the world that can say, we completed all the deployment and our company is completely transformed. So this race is an opportunity for everyone and in any country. But as I told you, the speed might be different. When we look in this survey, the answers, what are the top priorities of topics that these companies are working on, the answers are a bit different. That might highlight some different ways of doing. So the ones that are in gray are the technologies that are more linked to the core of the operations, of the business. So perhaps technologies that will bring very quickly results. The ones that are not necessarily in gray are technologies a bit around the operations 4.0. So it's very important to understand what is, again, bringing you this adventure when you launch it, because you need to make sure that what you launch is not just preparing the future, but helping you to get the results. So perhaps we can say, I don't know, but perhaps we can say that Germany and US having perhaps a more pragmatic vision of operations 4.0, while perhaps France and China are more preparing the infrastructure to launch later. This is a question for you. And the most important here is not this, is what are you working on in your companies? To implement this, all starts with people and ends with people. So what are the competencies that companies are mentioning? But it's almost the same in all companies. These are the results of China. So you can see software developers. Yes, because you need to customize sometimes, and you need to work with companies that use softwares. So you need these developers that can connect. You need data managers, because this is a lot of data, how to manage them. Industrial process engineers, this new generation of industrial process engineer, able to connect multiple systems that yesterday could not be connected. Data scientists, they need to be able to adapt some algorithm to your own company and to understand what's happening and what will help you to reduce your energy cost, improve your quality, stabilize your process to increase your capacity, for example. And finally, as we mentioned before, the cybersecurity expert, which will be a key element to protect your companies and not to be hacked in a plant by a kid or by a competitor or by a country. Now, to do this, BCG, we launched an initiative. Again, I told you I'm a new generation of consultants where we are a bit doers. Because to do this, companies have a difficulty, industrial company, because they need to go fast if they want to be competitive, faster than the competitor. But we all have an issue. The lines are running. People don't have time. You need motivated people. You need to find the right things. So we as consultants, at least we want to be a bit pioneers and help industrials to a bit test and make mistakes in another environment that is industrial but doesn't have these daily constraints. So these innovation centers are based on two elements. The first thing is end-to-end physical industrial lines. They are producing things. For example, the one we have in France, we are producing scooters for assembly processing, for assembly lines. We are producing food for processing companies like pharma, like chemicals, etc., because here you have more equipment issues. And we have also digital rooms for supply chain, for engineering. So basically those lines, the target is to reproduce issues of industrial companies and see all the technologies, the best technologies, to integrate them and see what is the impact and to test and to make mistakes. But it's not enough, because in this new revolution, you need to work, you need to be open, and you need an ecosystem, and you need to know people. And you have, in this, we have an open and dynamic worldwide ecosystem, including, of course, all the industrials, academic partners, engineering schools, startups, but also major technology companies like Dassault, for example. And it's an open and dynamic. That means we always have the best of best and to be pioneers compared to industrials again. What can you do in this ICO? Or perhaps you can do also you in your own companies to start to prepare. You need immersion because you need to convince your people about what we are talking about today. So you need to convince them. And the best way to convince is not to say, oh, I show video and then I like or I don't like. No, you need sometimes to be in hands-on immersion. You can have it in these centers. You need to have agile experimentation. You need to experiment and to adapt these technologies to your own world. So this is another possibility. And finally, you need to train your people and your trainers to deploy this in your own companies. So this industrial site, which is a unique type of site, helps to do these kind of things. But again, you can do perhaps in your own company to make it really real. So in BCG, we are having multiple ones in the world to cover different geographies. Because again, this is for deployment for international companies, but also can be for medium-sized or smaller companies. And now let me show you just a video to represent this.
Collaborative robots, 3D printing, augmented reality, big data. Technological innovations and industrial manufacturing are coming together to generate the next big industrial revolution. Through this revolution, it's possible to make between 10 and 20% productivity gains and develop customized products at the same cost and pace as a regular production. Industry 4.0 means the relocation of factories closer to consumers. Designed for people, factories that are more agile and environment friendly. It's an in-depth transformation. Today, the Boston Consulting Group has created a unique site, ICO, the Innovation Center for Operations. ICO is driven by one goal, helping manufacturers make the right choices to deliver massive and large-scale performance. Using the very latest technologies, ICO revolves around 2 real production lines, which enable the targeting of relevant performance levers of Industry 4.0. In a global ecosystem of startups, technological and academic partners, ICO is the Innovation Center for Industry 4.0 in France. Come and see for yourself.
So we are at our end. Let me take again my hat of citizen of the world. All this is having great impact on companies, but at the end, this is generating productivity for all of us in the world. And this productivity in the globalized world, this is what will help us have growth and will help us increase the cake in the world for our future generations. Thanks a lot, and perhaps see you there.